Mental Health Monday
on Radio City Talk
with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.
Yeah, it's that time of the week again where we sit down and we talk about mental health. Monday, the 27th of April, 2020. A quick heads up that next week's Mental Health Monday is going to be a huge one. We're going to do a 4-hour show dedicated to essentially mental health in the time of coronavirus. What we're going to do is dedicate a 4-hour program between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. to hear from organisations, services that are available that people can reach out to right now. Services that are down your street, in your local community, or national services. Now, everything has been thrown a little bit out of whack with coronavirus. The way we live, the way we work, 1,000,001 different things, from where we go to bed at night has changed, our opportunities that are coming down the line, the general uncertainty around life at the moment. Of course, people are going to have a mental health impact in regard to that one, as well as the physical impact that might be coming in the way of COVID-19. These are really difficult times. So next Monday, we're dedicated a 4-hour show to basically try and do our bit as a local radio station to let our community and our listeners know that this could well be a big thing that's going to stay with us for quite some time, and we need to know how to deal with it. Now, I'm really pleased to announce that as of today, Chasing the Stigma, local organisation, have agreed to deliver as part of the programme some free mental health training. Now, normally organisations come together, bring in different training providers to essentially deliver training sessions to staff members. Now, the team at Chasing the Stigma, they run the Ambassador of Hope training session. They're going to do like a radio-friendly bite-sized version, and they're going to do it live on the radio. Now, as far as we can tell, nobody's ever tried to do this before. It's never been done before. No one's ever broadcast this training in this way. So we're going to do it as we'll call it a UK first. It may well be a world first. And we're going to do it at 12:30 as part of next week's show. So we'll be on air between 11 and 3. At 12:30, we're going to do this mental health training for free, live on the radio. We're going to get it on, obviously, on air, but also via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter as well, so as many people as possible. Now, it's going to be a UK radio first, but at the same time, it might also be the biggest ever mental health training session, depending on how many people take part. So we'd really urge you to do it live. That's Monday, May the 4th, right here on Radio City Talk. That's just a quick heads up for what's coming next week. This week, we're going to be speaking to a couple of great guests, among them the Tranmere Rovers chairman Mark Palios, who joins us on the programme because they've got a new organisation and a new idea, which is looking at the issue of problem gambling within the community and within the community of football fans in particular. Mark Palios joins us on the programme. Mark, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Mike. Very good, thank you. In the circumstances, it's difficult for a lot of people, but if you keep busy and so forth, and there's a lot to do around the club, so it doesn't feel so bad, really.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. And before we come on to the work you're doing with the Big Step, can I just ask you about the work you're doing in the community at the moment? Because we know that COVID-19 is a physical threat, but I know you guys and the team have experienced what things are like from a mental health point of view, the isolation, the community problems that it causes as well. And you guys have gone above and beyond with the work that you're doing.
Yes and no. I'd say not above and beyond in the sense that when we came nearly 5.5 years ago now, one of the assets of the club was in fact its linkages to the community. So we've always seen that as a major part. And Dawn Tolcher, the MD, has been a big part in building that particular aspect of the business. So it was taking it a bit beyond the massive amounts that clubs do in their community anyway through the funded schemes they get, especially the Premier League clubs who get quite a bit of funding for that and all the good work that they do. This was trying to take it to a different level whereby, it was very much a feature of us becoming a deliverer of services to, in a way that you use the club because the club's a pretty unorthodox vehicle. It's not like a school. It's not like the probation service, etc. And we've used the club in that way over the period of time. And in COVID-19, one of the big things that we've been doing that Dawn has been organising together with Nicky in particular has been trying to help and use our stewards that were helping the council in terms of managing the food banks. We're actually creating food parcels. And one of the ways we try to use the club is to leverage off what I call the latent goodwill of the fan base. And they will put in both volunteer effort, they'll also put in cash, etc. So it comes through the prism of the club and then gets devolved out into the more vulnerable people who can't go and shop, for example. And that's how we've just tried to change and adjusted the focus from what we do of a weekday normally. So having we'd have Alzheimer's groups in at the ground, etc. Well, we clearly can't do that because of social distancing. So that's been basically the thrust of what we've been doing over the past 5 weeks.
Now let's talk about this new initiative. You're working alongside organisations like the Big Step, GamBan, and the NHS, looking at the issue of problem gambling. Now, obviously, you've had very senior roles within English football, Mark. I wanted to get your take on this first and foremost, because you've seen the onset, if you like, of the gambling industry and the role that it plays within the game. Have we got the right balance, do you think, at the moment, our relationship as football fans with the gambling industry?
I don't think the industry the football industry's got the right relationship, the right balance in it. And just to sort of express an interest in this, I did psychology at Manchester, and I worked at Wiston Hospital when I was playing football in the afternoons. I used to work in the hospital doing behaviour therapy and dealing with phobias and stuff. And this is all the same reward mechanism, and that's the insidious thing. Now, over the years since I was doing that, what's happened is, your gambling companies have had the opportunities now propose, because of the internet, basically. They can massively increase the interactive nature of gambling. They can massively increase the opportunities to gamble, etc., etc. And of course, they're motivated in increasing their market share and the amount of money they make from it. I just think that in itself has gone over the top. And I'd stress that we're not anti-gambling; we're anti sort of excessive gambling. And the phrases that the industry uses when the fun stops, stop. But actually, when the fun stops, you've gone too far. You're probably addicted. And so when I looked at the situation with coronavirus, I thought that this was an ideal way in which people trapped at home, bored, access to the internet. It's an ideal opportunity, to start gambling or to start gambling to excess. And so we felt that what we would do, we would set up basically a helpline, linking in with the right people, because we're not clinicians, and we can't diagnose. We can triage at this point, and then make sure they get to the right level of support that's out there, and also make us, again, this unorthodox organisation that you probably wouldn't be embarrassed ringing up and saying, look, can you help me? This isn't just for Tranmere fans. It's actually for families of Tranmere fans. It's actually for anybody in the community around the place to ring us, and we'll direct them. And then there's the longer term issue once we've gone beyond COVID, because Dawn can probably speak better about the plethora of, call them products if you like, that we offer. And this is just one of those products that we will continue to offer, because there's nothing better. There's lots of things that are better, but actually it's helpful to be able to see and be in a community that have experienced the same things as you. So we would hope to build up that type of community, again, around the club as a delivery vehicle.
And of course, the club and many organisations can be real conduits for good in regard to this one, but you've got to bring the experts in. The Big Step, GamBan, the NHS are all involved in this one too as well. So, if you do reach out to the local football club, you'll be in the hands of people who absolutely know what they're doing. And it's important to get those relationships right, isn't it?
Yeah, and so we were very cautious about raising this in the first place, because we were aware that, when calls come in, it's taken us some time, but we've got a handle on that now. Nicky's done that with Dawn, etc. In terms, so we can deal with the vulnerable people who need shopping sorted and stuff like that. And we just then looked at this and thought, well, actually, we really need to make sure that when we get the calls coming, and we get them to the right place as quickly as possible. So it ranges from James, who's from Big Step, who's an ex-gambling addict and really understands this scenario, and brought it to us, in fairness to him. Some time ago, when you remember the furore around the FA Cup, when in January, when you basically had to put a bet on or sign up to an account if you wanted to watch certain of the FA Cup games, and that for me was a massive signal that we'd gone too far in the game. Well, James got in contact then, and we've been developing this as a longer term thing, and I just thought that it'd be useful, in this particular scenario. So James is one of the first ports of call. GamBan will connect you with ways in which you can avoid gambling and block things, etc. And then finally, in extreme cases, if it really is serious, and it really is massively affecting the person and his family. Then we've got the NHS clinic, which is based in the northwest. It's the only one outside of London, and we've had a good talk with them as to exactly what happens and how it and so we I think that's the key point. Ring up, friendly voice on the end of the line, ready and to move you to the right person at the right time as quickly as possible.
I mean, I think it's testament to those experts and so on and so forth. But I think it's so crucial, with football clubs, and I think you've absolutely got the right balance here, Mark. They've got to understand that people will look to them and will turn to them at times when they'll actually may not turn to anybody else. And I think the fact that, they may never find the big step, or they may never find the GAM banner online or look for things on the NHS website, but they will, follow Tranmere Rovers on social media, head to your website to listen to the latest, Mickey interviews or whatever's on there as well. And actually, I think it almost legitimises the idea of seeking help if your local football club is doing it. And I think that's the power that comes from partnerships like this.
That's absolutely right, spot on. There's another angle to it as well, and that is that this is what I was quite keen to sort of make sure that we had a community that existed post the initial interaction, as it were, because the interventions that we used to do when I was working at Wiston were all well and good once they were in situ in the hospital grounds. But actually, when they went home, it was the environment, and there'd be relapses and so forth and so on. And so it is very much the context within which you exit the situation is massively important, and that has to be something that sustains you as well. And that's why I'm pretty keen, the vision is that we would have a number of people who would have been addicts who, will then form this community afterwards and then self-help not just themselves, but also help other people who are coming in as well. So it's a long-term issue, this. And I think the thing that really disturbs me most about gambling is it's a hidden addiction. If somebody's on drugs or if somebody's, an alcoholic, you can broadly see that. But this is a hidden addiction. And probably the first symptoms that you find in a family is that money starts to go missing and things like that. And then what happens then, the relationships which are built on trust, all relationships get shattered, and then you have family, fragmentation of the family. And we do call ourselves Wirrell's Family Club. So, I think it'd be remiss of us if we didn't actually try and do something, which we can do relatively easily. And intervene.
And in terms of football overall's relationship with the gambling industry, where you can up until very recently you could bet on whose socks were going to fall down next, who was going to take the next corner, and that was sort of during games as well. The opportunities were there. Stadiums sponsored by betting companies, clubs sponsored on their shirt by betting companies that don't even exist within this particular country. It's for the foreign betting markets. What can the FA, what should the Premier League be doing right now to sort of just take the edges off some of these extremes that we're seeing, do you think, in regard to gambling and football?
Yeah, there's a few points in that, Mike. The first thing is that I think that the FA is less influential in this in terms of, the eyes on things, because, you tend to have just like the England team, and you've got the FA Cup, of course, etc. And I think, in fairness to the FA, it's not just because I was chief exec there, but in fairness to the FA, I think they got caught short. They had an extensive relationship with Ladbrokes, I think it was, and they were terminating that. And at the time that they sold these rights, they sold them to IMG, and IMG then on-sold them. And then this popped up almost like 2 years later. So there was a function of timing in that. They may have been a bit smarter in the way in which they decided as to how the rights were then sold on or sold down. But anyway, so I think that the FA sort of got the message and is moving away from it. The professional leagues are a law unto themselves, and that's where the difficulty is. And I've used the phrase they need to wean themselves off it, because there's still a lot of finance that comes into the game. You can question the effectiveness of industry-funded prevention, as it were, because clearly it's very difficult. If I'm the chief executive of a major betting company, I want my guys to sell more bets. It's as simple as that. And I'm not sure that what we see at this point in time is anything that really reflects that. And for us, we didn't. We're not preaching to other clubs, because we recognise that some of the money that trickles down to us comes from betting companies, because you've got the Sky Bet League and so forth. And we can't change that context. We can just look after ourselves and hopefully over a period of time influenced the debate. The thing that it was more by accident than design. If you looked at the 6 playoff finalists in the EFL this year, or last year and last season, of the 6 finalists, we were the only one that didn't have a betting sponsor on our shirts, and that wasn't for the fact that nobody fancied sponsoring us, because we did have offers. But some of the offers included putting betting terminals in the ground, and it's just there's no way. Once I started to look at the fact that the actual impact of the internet on the industry, because I hadn't really thought about it until a few years ago, and in seeing that and seeing the damage it was causing, because we had various employees who went through difficulties with betting, and then it started to become live to us, and that's when we started to really think that we would just quietly keep away from it all. It was the FA Cup thing that brought it out, because we weren't seeking to get plaudits for being holier than thou. It was just a function that it wasn't right for us in terms of where our brand was as far as we were concerned. But it is a difficult thing, because because when we come out of COVID, of course, the industry is going to be struggling, because the clubs, like all businesses, will be struggling. And there's already a difficult financial environment in football if we don't change the wages, the unregulated wages market. So, money will be in short supply, and therefore the temptation to support gambling will probably exist for quite some time until alternatives are found. But having said that, you can still do your own bit in terms of trying to help, and I think clubs could do a lot more, because, as you say, they are the acceptable entry point for a lot of people into a more formal system.
Absolutely a force for good. Tranmere Chair Mark Palios, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us on the programme today. That's Mark Palios from Tranmere Rovers. Now, Dawn got mentioned a couple of times during the first part of the programme with Mark Palios. Dawn Tolcher is with us now. Now, she's doing, I'm going to say the hard work. That's not the right thing to say, Dawn, is it? In regard to making this work at Tranmere Rovers. But we've heard from the boss. Now let's hear from you, because you're coordinating this. This is a big undertaking, isn't it? And I think it's genuinely going to have a huge impact, Dawn, on people's lives.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think, as you touched on before in the conversation with Mark, the important bit of any piece of work like this is to work with the right people. And I think we're really positive. We've got the right partnerships in terms of the organisations you've talked about, but also locally. The football clubs tried to make a real strong delivery mechanism within the Wirral. And that's with something like this, we want to make sure that we do that really well. But yeah, I mean, the first article went out at 3 p.m. last Thursday about the new initiative, and by 9 p.m. that night we'd had someone come forward already who was in a real difficult time, knock-on effect on their mental health and their general way of life due to gambling.
I mean, what a brilliant example that is of showing the impact that a football club can have. Somebody who maybe didn't feel they could reach out to different organisations, but the local football team said something, so they responded. That's great power that you guys are wielding.
Yeah, I think what we've tried hard is, I use the word of, it's neutral. It's a neutral and it's a safe and trusted brand. And I think people that have seen the community work we've done, we always make sure there's the quality to the delivery. So that example, we've already made sure today that individual's been followed up, what support have they had, to make sure that we're meeting our word really on what we've said we'll do. A big area we've also tried to do that is around young people and how they develop their relationship with the club, and really tried to expand that over the last few years, whether that's a 6-year-old coming for a soccer school, whether they're coming to a futsal league, or whether they're part of our education programme. But that's another big area that I think we're quite keen to develop around this gambling initiative. As you'll be aware, that due to online developments, 16 to 18-year-olds at the moment, particularly their use of online gambling is through the roof like it's never been before. So that's something that we hope after Corona we can focus on that area particularly.
I think that's really interesting because, you'll know, Dawn, that, growing up there was always like the betting shop, or you'd have the Grand National, or you'd have the pools and things like that. But actually you've got there, you mentioned 16 to 18-year-old, a generation growing up where literally anything's to bet for at any point, at any time, on any game, on any phone or any laptop.
Yeah, and it's just the norm. And I think, as you say, if you use the Grand National as an example, it was an annual event. When I was younger, it was an annual event, and it was the one time in the year that you got to have a bit of a bet. Some of the lads we've got in the college or other programmes, they're betting 10 times a day. And it's just the norm for them. So it's how, one of the phrases we try and use with some of our community work is how we break the cycle. And I think this is an example of a programme we can use. How can we break the cycle of what could become a very unhealthy habit to an addiction?
Well, I was going to say, because there's that thing, isn't it, where you move from a lifestyle choice to an unhealthy habit to an addiction as well. But as we spoke with Mark, there's a normalisation of these gambling companies throughout the entire world of football. So if you're entirely into the world of football, you're not going to hear those messages that say, well, maybe this isn't that healthy, maybe you want to try something else. You'll occasionally hear when the fun stops, stop, and gamble aware and messages like that. But that sort of proactive stance that you guys are taking could be, a real game changer for them as well. Are you going to have specific sessions for different age groups or different types of people, do you think?
Yeah, potentially. So we've talked briefly with the partners that we're working with. I think we'll focus initially on the 16 to 18 as they come back to the college, obviously when we go back to normal as part of their induction programme. Just touching on what you've mentioned there, a big thing is the consequences. They don't necessarily understand the consequences of something like gambling to extreme levels. So how we can educate them in terms of how that might lead to them not completing their education, or if they don't complete their education, how it can have a knock-on effect with relationships, with partners, with parents, with friends, because the addictive nature of the behaviour can take over that, through to holding a job down, through to income. So that's one of the big focuses. And then potentially with some of the younger ones as they start to come through, maybe the 14 to 16, because probably 5 years ago we wouldn't have thought that would be an issue, but we know young people at that age are around gambling a lot. And then the other through to sort of an older generation and sort of the different age groups, as Mark touched on, there's the fan base, but then there's outside the fan base and how we can support maybe a sibling of someone or a wife or a parent of someone and how they can gain support. So we haven't got into all the detail. I think all we want to know is this is not going to be a short-term initiative just in this period. It's something the club wants to work on long-term.
Yeah, and I was speaking to the team at GamStop just a few weeks ago on the programme, and I was really surprised when they had their sort of breakdown of the different types of people, younger generations, women who were signing up for their service, which essentially banned them. And I think we have in our minds, don't we, what a problem gambler looks like, but it's not. It's not what you've described, a 16-year-old boy. People don't think of that. It's not a woman in her 30s. It's a certain bloke wearing a certain type of jacket who goes in certain pubs, and that's the sort of image that we have. But it's right across society, and people need to know. In terms of reaching out to you, in terms of the confidence in which you'll hold these sort of conversations, if people are saying, look, I don't really know if this is the right thing to do, or I don't know if I'm reaching out, what are those conversations like? What's that first phone call maybe or email going to be like with the club if people do reach out and want to speak to you?
So all the emails come through to our generic community at tranmererovers.co.uk, and the phone calls are through to the community number. They will be received by a team with, all of them have got 30 years service plus at the club of community delivery, and they understand that first step. The first thing when we talked about this, they said, is how do we make sure we look after these people properly? Because that first step, that first phone call is critical. So they've got the experience to make sure that they're not experts in gambling, and they won't pretend to do that. But what they will do is be an ear, listen, and be able to make sure that we support and direct and acknowledge that step people have taken. And all the work we do, whether that's alcohol, whether that's drugs, whether that's obesity, it's acknowledging that's a massive step for someone and how we can support them with that. So the team are very, very experienced, but as they won't attempt to answer anything, it'll be very much triage and very much how we can support them to get the expert help they need.
Excellent stuff. And then it's all about signposting to the right people and those in the know. Do you think those sessions might be held within that club environment as well? Hosted at the club, if you like? Yeah,
definitely. I think that's something we're hoping, that what we find is that what's really nice is even when you're talking about quite difficult topics, people get excited to come to Prenton Park.
Yeah.
And it's great that can be outside a match. So they still get that buzz and that excitement, and whether that's for a cup of tea to talk about, how they're going to lose weight, or whether that's to come and talk about their son going to a soccer school. So what I think Mark and I have talked about would be great is to use the club as that community asset. And where people might want to go and sit in a traditional environment the same way they don't want to go to a doctor's surgery, how and be comfortable to be able to get that support to help them.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, I've been to many conferences and events and meetings and things like that at football stadiums. The first thing I always do, Dawn, is try and find that window that shows you the pitch. There's something about that moment. Just looking, I think it's something really special. Now, if people want to make contact with the football club in regard to this, Dawn, what do they need to do? Where can they go? The websites? Is it about phone numbers?
Yeah, the best thing to do is go onto the Tranmere Rovers website. That's tranmererovers.co.uk. That gives sort of the links to everything. One of the things we are going to develop through this is a designated page to make sure that people can talk at any time around anything. The number to ring is 0330 144452. But let's say the best thing is if they just go on the website, that all the information is there.
tranmererovers.co.uk. There'll be a designated page coming on that one, and 0330 144452.
Yeah, that's great.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Dawn. Really appreciate you joining us. Look forward to hearing about the success of this in sort of months and years to come as well. And thanks as well to Mark Palios, the co-chair of Tranmere Rovers Football Club, for joining us on the programme too on Mental Health Monday. Dawn, Mark, thank you both for your time. I appreciate you joining us. Don't forget, if you want to find services that are close to you, use the Hub of Hope, hubofhope.co.uk, and that'll find local services according to your postcode if you want to type that in there. It's also available as an app. If you want to find out more information about the service from Tranmere Rovers today, the website tranmererovers.co.uk. That number again, 03301 44452. Mental Health Monday from Radio City Talk. Don't forget, next week's show is going to be an extended 4-hour version with that free mental health training. Be part of it on May the 4th. Use the hashtag Mental Health Monday.
Mental Health Monday
On Radio City Talk.
with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.